Hello and welcome to another D&D Stories. I am your host, TheWriter. This is the show where I sit here and regale you with all the tabletop gaming stories and remember when something cool happens. So we return once more to the campaign of Oceanrim, and we are going back to the Padclaw tribe burrow to check in on Prince Phudo the Bullet Slayer of the Padclaw tribe. And today is a very special day indeed because all the trading with the lizard folk has finally paid off, and Phudo has been hailed as a hero of the people. He's secured the river for the kobold to go get freshwater fish because they can't fish out on the beach. The nasty humans from Oceanrim would come to get them. And the kobolds are going to be able to expand inward. And at the same time, today is Prince Phudo Padclaw's birthday. And that's probably something you haven't seen in a D&D game before, right? Somebody's birthday party, especially for one of your players, because it kind of puts the spotlight on them and takes it away from the others, or like an NPC, maybe. But yes, it's his birthday, and the reason behind that was that Phudo couldn't exactly go shopping in Oceanrim, where you could buy anything from any enchanter, any kind of magic item, trade ships, blah-de-blah-de-blah, bringing all that cool stuff in. You know, a kobold cannot grab a sack of gold pieces and go to market. You know, it just doesn't work that way. So I was like, gosh, you know, he's played a few games. He needs, like, some new toys to play with, because by now he's, like, level 9. You know, he's due for some upgrades. So, birthday party, yes. The kobolds don't exactly have a calendar, but they do have, like, you know, little tech marks on the wall. They keep track of the seasons, the weather patterns, and stuff like that. A very primitive way of keeping time. So the approximation is that today is Prince Phudo Padclaw's birthday. And if you remember, he's got 15 siblings. So there's a lot of parties that go on sometimes. But especially large is this one because they're celebrating taking ownership of the river. They're celebrating Phudo as a hero, the Bullet Slayer. Phudo the Bullet Slayer, yeah. And today's his birthday also, so it's a big birthday bash. Everybody in the tribe, anybody who's anybody is participating. They've got, you know, intact wine bottles and steins and ale and food they stole off this cart, and, you know, the carcasses of deer are laying around with like 5 or 6 kobold on them with blood going down the front of their muzzles. They're playing games of chance. There's a great big table set up. You know, some kobold somehow, don't ask how, stole a chandelier, and they used it as a centerpiece because they couldn't put it in the ceiling because the ceiling is dirt. But they put it in the center of the long table like a centerpiece, and they light the candles like a birthday cake. And all to honor Prince Phudo the Bullet Slayer, one who completed the trade for the river, the one who protected the tunnel diggers, who slayed the bullet, who came back with the mithril bars for Stands-with-a-Fist's mithril arm. He's the top kobold right now. So he got a whole bunch of presents, and I wrote them down. The first thing he actually got was a bullet helmet, and I know it's like bullet or something, but I say bullet because it's fast and it's scary, just like actual bullets. But the kobold went back of their own volition and cut the head off the beast, and they like carved out the brain and they carved out all the rest of the skull to use like the top piece of carapace, and they like spooned out the eyes and all that good stuff, and they widened the eyes because kobold have great big cave-dwelling eyes, and they made it into a helmet for him. And it was like a +1 helmet that gave 5 resistance to like blunt damage. So it was actually a pretty good helmet. And what else? He got a cure serious wounds potion. He got some like green rags. It's like that's the rough equivalent of getting bed sheets. Like, who invited that guy? And he got a compass from one of the shaman that does not point north. It actually points to the nearest source of fresh water, which for a ranger is a great thing to have, knowing where the nearest drinking water is. He also, from his father, received 1 death arrow, which, if you recall, is a +8 to hit and a +8 to whatever damage it causes. So it's a very great arrow to have. And I think we just used arrows and crossbow bolts interchangeably, just so we wouldn't have to mess with it. So it was a death bolt or a death arrow, just 1, because those things are worth like 1,700 gold. They're really hard to come across. And he got like bits of colored glass and broken bottles and like a 5x5 piece of a stained glass window. You know, kobold gifts, most of them. And there was a great big celebration. And finally, Chief Padclaw, his father, comes forward, you know, to quiet the crowd and to bring attention up to Phudo Padclaw. He says, you know, my son, you have done so well lately. You are a hero of the people. You know, these past few weeks have been filled with joy and decadence and you know, morale has never been higher here in the Padclaw Burrow, and it's been like 2 weeks since we left Phudo Padclaw. So time for him to rest and level up and stuff has gone by. So again, he's like level 9 now. He's getting up there for a ranger. My son, I am so proud of you. And for this, as a leader of the people, I have decided that a new honor should be bestowed upon you. He says, what is that, Father? He says, now that we have gained the rights over the lands surrounding the river to the south of us, outside the forest, and into the next patch of forest, it is time for the Padclaw tribe to move inland, away from Oceanrim, away from the salt water where we cannot catch the fish, you know, away from the mean humans that wander around in plate mail with bows and arrows and torches, you know, the guards like on the wall in Oceanrim. And it's time for us to move inland and to be nearer to the river that gives fresh water and fish and shiny stones and algae and all the things that the kobold love to get out of the river. And he goes, my son, I want you to begin a new settlement for the Padclaw tribe. And once it is set down and secure and flourishing, we will all move there. And he says, oh, you know, Father, I am 16th in line for the throne. I am so honored. And, you know, Phudo is still like an adventurer. He's still a hunter. He's still a bounty hunter in and around Oceanrim. So he's not quite ready for this desk job, but when the entire kobold tribe is counting on him, he can't exactly say no. So his father wants him to go and like take a flag and stick it somewhere and take some kobold with him to make a new home for the Padclaw tribe. And as soon as this place is all set up, they are going to collapse and abandon the current burrow. And it's just going to be an empty shell. And then they'll probably put like, you know, a rare like powder keg or start whacking all the ceiling supports until it cascades and just destroy it entirely and move inland. Because the river is such a great force for food and water and everything that kobold like, you know, shiny stones, geodes, that they cannot resist its siren call. And since the lizard folk have promised to move away, whatever they're doing, surely it's nothing important. It is time for the Padclaw tribe to prosper. So they're basically getting a newer, bigger house. And remember, the Padclaw tribe is like 700 kobolds, so this is going to be a serious exodus. And wherever Phudo says is the safest, you know, most lush and food-heavy kind of place for them to stay, that's where they're going to stay. So this is a big responsibility for Prince Phudo of the Padclaw tribe. And Phudo, of course, accepts, and he bows gracefully. He gets hugs from his father and his siblings and the citizens who look up to him like a superhero, and he dons his bullet helmet, and they're like, yeah, it's like all shined up with oils and stuff, and they carved it just right so his horns stick out of the back and it doesn't hurt him. It's like, he looks phenomenal. And then he puts like the eyes of the eagle goggles down over the helmet. I think the eyes of the eagle were like a +5 to spot or a +5 to search or whatever. but they fit over the helmet, so it's almost like you could stick your head underwater and not have to worry about getting your eyes wet. It was really cool to just kind of combine items like that. But it says, of course, Father, and he says, son, make your preparations and please, go for it. Find a safe place for your people inland where there is more food, more water, more everything, and that is where we will settle from then on. And I said, Phudo, the party will last well into the night, or into the morning rather, because kobold are mostly nocturnal. Because if you remember, if they go out into sunlight, they've got those great big eyes. They become dazzled, and they take like a -6 to everything. It sucks, but they party well on. And I say, give me like a fortitude check to see. Can you hold your alcohol? Can you finish out all the party games and stuff like that? He rolls like a 10. And I was like, okay, that's pretty average. You're not the first one to leave, but you're far from the last either. So they're still celebrating the idea of moving over close to the river and stuff like that, long after you've opened all your presents and shaken hands with everybody and done the dances and all that good stuff. And as you're leaving, you kind of realize that you didn't get a birthday present from Stands-with-a-Fist, who is, again, Phudo's lover / best friend / tank during fights and stuff like that. He said, oh yeah. I said, Stands-with-a-Fist is waiting for you when you head off away from the party with a bundle under her arms that for you to unwrap. It's your birthday present. I was like, oh, thank you, Stands-with-a-Fist. What is it? And he unwraps it, and it's a cloak of Elvenkind. Now, a cloak of Elvenkind, when you're in the forest, grants like a +5 to stealth or to move silently or whatever you want to call that. So it's a great cloak. And you wonder, did she steal it off a caravan? Did she get it off the adventurers in the tunnel? Did she have a shaman enchant it somehow? It's a great magic item for him to have. I think he was wearing a cape of survival or something. So the Cloak of Elvenkind was a great upgrade for him, especially as a ranger, because all of his stuff comes out of the forest anyway. And of course, Stands-with-a-Fist puts the arm around his hip and leads him on towards her burrow, where of course there's going to be birthday sex. And I say, Phudo, you get to do pretty much whatever you want, because, it is your birthday. So we'll do a graceful fade to black for that. And he's like, what do I roll for that? Is it a ride check? And I go, shut up. We do a graceful fade to black this time around. But the next day, you are the first to wake, and you can begin to gather up the kobolds that the chieftain intends to go with you. And there are, and I roll the dice, there are 27 of them in total. There's, an elder, there's a shaman, there's a bunch of able-bodied workers, there's a small number of children who are going to be there to do, the little grunt work, like peeling the ivy off of stuff and making food when nobody else has time to, things like that. When they're tunneling and building structures, the kids might do the cooking or the fishing. And I go, there are 27 of them, plus you, plus Stands-with-a-Fist, who is, of course, coming with you. And, of course, I roll on the pregnancy chart, and so nothing yet, but you never know. They said, well, there's no time like the present. So, just after sunset, again, nocturnal, they head off westward inland, away from Oceanrim, away from the forest that they have always called home, along the river, and past the town of Pleasant Grove. And Pleasant Grove is where Mattias the Prowler came from. So, world building, ooh. They pass Pleasant Grove and they go to a place where the river splits, because there it is just completely untamed, thick foliage with weeping willows and leaning trees and fallen logs and boulders everywhere, just completely untamable land. The humans that live in Oceanrim and the farmers that live in Pleasant Grove, they can't. It would take a phenomenal effort to claim this land, and for what? A few extra yards of cornfield. They leave it to grow wild where it is. So apart from the the occasional hunter, this is the wild lands. This is where you find ferns and weird berries and boulders with somebody wrote graffiti on it from 100 years ago and you never see it, and trees you can't even wrap your arms around with 10 people, and things like that. It is a completely overgrown, wild place. It is the perfect place to start a new kobold colony, a new, better kobold colony. And so after they get to the break in the river, and they look it over, it's deep, it's wide, it's like a 4-lane highway, it's really wide, and they decide, we could, right up in the nexus where the river splits 2 ways while it's going out, it's going towards the sea, it's 2 rivers, and then it comes into 1 river, and then it deposits the water in the ocean. But it is a freshwater river, so it's just fine. Up in the nexus, where the 2 rivers become 1, where it's just as wild as you might figure, they decide to make camp. And Phudo has his sleeve tugged on by a small kobold child, a little girl that we ended up calling Little Miss, because I don't know how to come up with names for kobold children. So we called her Little Miss. Said, Prince Phudo, there's a cave way over there amongst the rocks. And he goes, really? And he goes, yes, it's just covered by this weeping willow. And she leads him over there by the hand. He's kind of leaning down because she's a tiny little thing. And then they push the branches of the weeping willow aside, and sure enough, there's this big cave that's hidden right next to the river. There's a sandbar and slate gravel, and then it's just straight into this cave. It's got a small trickle of water coming out of it that joins the river, but not enough to make a 3rd river. It's just there's probably a wellspring under there somewhere, but all the better because that's fresh water, it's mineral water. The source could be hot, which would be even better. And Stands-with-a-Fist and Phudo kind of look at each other like, wow, this is perfect. If we could turn this cave into the new new Padclaw burrow, all we'd have to do is hollow it out, bring some diggers, start carving out caves and tunnels and dens and great rooms. It would take a while. It would take a few moons to do this. But, this is the perfect spot, And they go, thank you, Little Miss. Good eye, good job. Now, why don't you go back and Stands-with-a-Fist and I will check this cave out and make sure it's not, occupied, like a bear or something like that. And, hey, even if there is a bear, free bear pelt for them, and then they can move in. And they go, okay, well, there's a source of water in here, obviously, but beyond that, could be anything. So we'll bring in the shovels and pickaxes once we make sure that it's safe. And so they tell everybody what they're doing. They leave the elder and the shaman in charge because they are the 2 oldest kobolds there. The shaman knows a little bit of healing magic, and the elder is very wise. So they get to picking berries and chopping a little bit of firewood, and they have some of the kids sitting on the riverbank fishing. They are well out of sight of any humans or anything like that might come and get them just because they're kobolds. So this is a pretty safe place. It's wild. It's wild and free. So we're going to go check this cave out, Phudo tells them. So we'll be back in a little bit. So they, Phudo and Stands-with-a-Fist go, and they push aside the weeping willow leaves, and they journey down into darkness. And there's a slight incline as it goes up kind of into the hills, and the water flows out of it, so the water flows downward. There's a slight incline as they go several hundred yards forward. This is a very long cave system, and occasionally there's a small room, a small little pocket here and there. These could just as easily be, burrows, storage rooms, cells to keep shaman stuff in, apothecary rooms, things like that, places to embalm the dead. great rooms to hold meals and meetings and things and like that. And it's like, this place is going to be great. And they continue on down until they come to a lake, an underground freshwater lake. And Phudo looks around like, this couldn't be any better than it already is. And I said, Phudo, there's something glowing down in the water that kind of lights the room. It's almost like when you have like a swimming pool and there's like a light in the bottom that makes the whole room look kind of blue and shimmery. It's kind of like that. And Phudo goes, we should check this out. And they wander forward, and I go, Phudo, it kind of smells like salt in here, or like sulfur, or not sulfur, God, like salt. And Stands-with-a-Fist leans down and she tries the water and she spits it out and she goes, it's seawater. And Phudo kind of frowns and furrows his brow. Seawater? We're too far inland. We're a day's journey from Oceanrim, plus however long it took us to get here from the Padclaw tribe. So where is this coming from? All this salt water doesn't come inland and then flow up and then out into the river. We would have tasted it in the river as well. But yeah, there's apparently a trickle of salt water coming out of this cave when there not ought to be. So whatever it is, it's probably the source of that glow down there is producing salt water instead of the natural geyser under it, which would produce fresh water. And they go, Phudo climbs up onto the sandbar, up around it, like over to the right, and he's like trying to see what's down there because the water's flowing. It's misty down below with sediment and minerals and things like that, so he can't quite see what's down there. And while he does this, they're like walking up among the stalagmites that spring from the ground. He runs straight into a monster. And if you open for your homework, your Bestiary 4 and find an Elder Thing. An Elder Thing is a drum-shaped monster with tentacles that go out the bottom and like a jester hat-shaped head that has eyeballs where the bells would be. And it's got two big flailing tentacles instead of arms. It doesn't really have a mouth, but it's like pink and veiny, like a flaccid penis. And as soon as he bumps into it, because he thought it was like a stalagmite, it's kind of stalagmite-shaped. But it was either sitting there or disoriented or sleeping, but he walks right into the thing because he's looking at the water as he goes forward. So he bumps right into it, and it gives this ungodly screech and tries to like grab him up in his tentacles. And Phudo's like, oh God, and pulls out his frosty crossbow and like shoots it as soon as he can. I was like, roll initiative. I was like, this nasty, slimy, brine-smelling thing does not belong here. It is not of this world. But given all the cracks in the dimensions and things that we've been seeing lately, it's kind of not super unusual. But this Lovecraftian thing like sways back and forth like a palm tree in a hurricane. Its eyes look in all directions, so you can't sneak up on it. Again, like jester hat eye stalks. And like Stands-with-a-Fist runs up to do battle with it. And like she tries to like shoryuken this thing like in the chin, but it doesn't have a head like one might imagine. So like her regular fighting techniques really don't work. So she punches one of the eyes out of its eye stalks, and Phudo stamps on it, squishes. And again, no mouth, so they don't know how it's making this noise or how it would like eat them if it killed them, but it like surges forward on all these tentacles to attack them. And it grabs Stands-with-a-Fist up in its tentacles, and we've all seen enough hentai to know where this is going. So Phudo loads up the automatic like crossbow cartridge, the kind that have like 5 arrows inside before you have to stop and reload. And he starts unloading arrows into it, but he's shooting into melee, so he takes like a -4. So he's like hitting the cave wall, he's hitting rocks. He finally hits a couple of them because it's got like a drum-shaped or a barrel-shaped body to hit it a couple of times. And like it's kind of like a gross hentai because there's just tentacles everywhere and eyeballs on eye stalks. But Stands-with-a-Fist frees one of her arms and just like starts batting at the eyeballs like an angry mountain tiger, just trying to take the eyeballs out until it's only got a couple of them left, and like scratching through all the veins and stuff, sending this white, like pussy grossness out down its side instead of blood, until finally it releases her from sheer amount of damage after it like squeezes her with its tentacles and slams her against the wall, and finally lets her go to flee for its life. It took too much damage, so it's going to try and run away. And Phudo watches this thing kind of slouch down into the water, into the underground lake. And Phudo's like, I pull my mithril short sword and I jump on it. I can't let it get away. And Phudo got a mithril short sword from the adventurers that invaded the tunnel. So he leaps onto it. I was like, make me an acrobatics check, I guess. Because, this thing has, the bottom of this monster is like a squid. So if it gets all the way into the water, it's going to get away. So Phudo makes his acrobatics check and he leaps onto this monster's body, and it's like Link with the Master Sword. And slams it down straight through the center of this beast and twists and then rips his sword to one side, spraying gore and blood and pus in all directions, while its like remaining eye stalks go limp and all of its tentacles flop every which way. I was like, okay, Phudo, make me like a reflex save or something. Otherwise, you're gonna get dragged down with it. It's dead weight now. So he makes his reflex and thankfully does well, because with his heart going that fast, he would have drowned pretty quick. And Stands-with-a-Fist, after overcoming being slammed against a stone wall, comes and helps pull him out of the river. But all the gore and blood does not go with like the flow of the water. Instead, it sinks to the bottom into the strange white glow that they saw earlier. And Phudo's like, "Are you okay? Are you all right? Are you bleeding from the head or anything? No. Are you okay? Yeah, are you okay? Did it violate you with its tentacles? No." As we're gonna have a talk about this later. Anyway. So Phudo obviously is very curious about this glow in the bottom of the lake, and he tightens up his eyes of the eagle, which basically serve as goggles. Let's face it. And he goes, hold my tail. And Stands-with-a-Fist holds onto his tail, and he leans like out at an angle over the water and like sticks his head in, and the eyes of the eagle keep all the salt water out of his eyes, which would have been really funny if they'd confirmed that it was salt water and then he stuck his head in and opened his eyes. He would have looked like a jackass. But he sticks his head under the water and he looks and he sees another crack like he did in the Oceanrim waterways. Remember when he looked through and he saw the city below the city, Relaya, or Relia, or however it's pronounced. I just say Relaya. I don't care. When he saw Relaya below Oceanrim, the city below the city, and he gives his tail a couple of tugs and Stands-with-a-Fist pulls him back up. And he goes, "You've got to see this. Remember what I told you about when I was off to get those mithril bars?" And he kind of takes his bullet helmet off and he puts it on Stands-with-a-Fist and he grabs her tail. "Watch it." And he goes, "No." "Look at this." And he holds her by the tail and leans her out at the same angle, and she sticks her head under the water and she looks for a while, and of course he looks while she's looking, but he pulls her back up and he puts his helmet back on. It's like, "We've got to go tell the others. We must consult with the elder and the shaman, because this is too perfect of a cave. Maybe we can plug it. Maybe we can do something else." So they go back. The monster's body is long since gone, and the gore and sprays of blood are going to be washed away pretty soon anyway. So they go back outside, and they find that the kobold encampment is in chaos, and Little Miss runs up. Prince Phudo, there's a monster running around in our camp." And he's like, "What?" And he pulls out his crossbow again, and Stands-with-a-Fist is already cracking her knuckles, and they run and they burst out of the foliage, and they find that there is a coral monster running around in their encampment, and it's the most horrifying thing they've ever seen. It's got those giant spiky starfish for hands. It's got a fish skull for a head. It's got, barnacles all up and down. It barely looks like some kind of hulking figure with 2 arms and 2 legs. And again, the stats I used were like a coral golem or something like that, but more than fair challenge. And it's made out of basically hardened underwater plants. So it's covered with spikes. It can poison you. It can grapple you. It can hurt you a lot. But sticking out of one of its shoulders from between all the shells and seaweed and brine that this thing is giving off is another one of those silvery staffs. And as it sticks out at an odd angle, the monster just kind of wanders back and forth in like concentric circles, like stamping out cooking fires and kicking over tents and like drop kicking any kobold that gets close enough. They're running like mice in all directions, like running up trees and clinging to the very top branches. They're disappearing into the foliage, running in terror of this monstrosity. And Phudo's like, I take the first shot before it sees me, and he shoots it in the back, and it whirls around. I was like, okay, roll initiative. So Phudo and Stands-with-a-Fist, this is why we're the Phudo the Bullet Slayer and Stands-with-a-Fist with the mithril arm. And they run into battle with this thing. And of course, Stands-with-a-Fist has to do flurry of blows with her new mithril arm. And does exceptional damage right out the front. But when it comes around to the monster's turn, it grabs her like around the middle, like right where her ribs end, like above her hips, with those big starfish hands. And if you've ever looked at the bottom of a starfish, it's all spikes. It's all spikes and nastiness. And she screams in agony as it basically like picks her up and just squeezes the fuck out of her and starts like bashing her against the ground. She's got 8 levels in monk, but she's still a kobold, and she could die pretty quick. So of course, Phudo changes out the cartridge and puts a new cartridge into his repeating crossbow, and like charges into battle. He's still taking those -4s because he doesn't have the feat that allows him to shoot into melee yet. But he's like pegging this thing with, pin cushioning it with all these different arrows until it comes back around to Stands-with-a-Fist, and she's like trying to wrench herself free, but she's held from so many angles. She would basically have to rip herself open to get away, until finally Phudo's like, all right, I climb up its back. Maybe I can get that staff out of its arm, or maybe it'll die if I pull the staff out. And I was like, what? He said, yeah, it's made of rocks and coral and spiky stuff. I'm going to climb up its back. All right, make a climb check. So Phudo like Super Mario's his way up the back of this monster. It has like a tail made of seaweed, and so he uses it like a rope and just like runs up the back of this thing, trying not to touch the giant urchins that make up its shoulders. And finally he gets to the very top, and I was like, okay, roll me a reflex so it doesn't like throw you off like Shadow of the Colossus. And he makes it, thank goodness, and he wrenches the staff out, and it starts to fall to pieces. Like the urchins and the seaweed and the shells and the coral and junk just start to fall off of it. It drops, Stands-with-a-Fist, but it's still like alive. Roar! And tries to grab her again. And this time, the monster has a head, so Stands-with-a-Fist like Shoryuken and jumps and hits it right in the jaw and knocks its head off, the great big like fish skull, and it goes flying and pinwheels into the river, and the monster just kind of comes apart. And Phudo's like, I shoot it. I say, it's dead. I shoot it again. It's still dead. I quadruple check, shoot it in the back. I go, it's dead. I'm making sure that it's dead. And Phudo's got the staff in one hand and his crossbow in the other hand. And I go, okay, the coral beast or monstrosity or whatever it was came apart. You've destroyed it. And so, whatever magic that staff had, or whatever amalgamation beast that was holding all that stuff together, like armor, is dead. It came apart. And I go, think of it like a ghost that inhabits a suit of armor. The outside doesn't matter. It's whatever's inside, and you managed to kill it, so good job. And he's got another one of those silvery staffs. He's like, didn't we trade these to the lizard folk? And Stands-with-a-Fist goes, Phudo, look! And he whips around and looks at the river, and there's another glowing spot in the river. And he goes, oh, God! And he runs over, and he sticks his head under the water. There's another crack! And he goes, there's more. There are more appearing. This is like the third one. There was one under Oceanrim, one in the cave, and now there's one under the river. This freshwater river could turn into a saltwater river. That is going to ruin everything. And so, once he puts, a couple of Cure Light Wounds spells onto Stands-with-a-Fist, because she's bleeding out her sides pretty badly. It's a good thing she didn't lose like an intestine or something. But Phudo is a ranger, so he does get ranger spells, which include lower level healing spells. So he like holds her sides for a while and lets the light and the sparkles enter her body until she is better. And they run back, the beast is gone, come back to camp, the beast is gone. And they take like an hour to get everybody out of their trees, out of their bushes, out of their little gopher holes that they dug to quiver in terror before this coral monster. And they finally gather everybody back up and, it's dead, oh yeah, Phudo the Bullet Slayer, yeah. Stands-with-a-Fist, you protected us all. And the children all run and hug Stands-with-a-Fist because she's a powerful female icon now. Like, everybody knows her name and everybody knows the mithril arm, and she punched it right in the fucking face. Did you see that? Wow. And stuff like that. So their reputations as local heroes only keep rising because pretty much everybody was watching this time around, so they saw this throwdown. They saw them shatter this thing into a million pieces and punch it in the face. But finally, they get everything calmed down. Everybody calm down. We're gonna make some food. We're gonna sit. We're gonna take all the pieces of that beast and kind of bury it so we don't have to look at it. We're gonna keep the giant fish skull as a trophy, that kind of thing. Obviously it didn't drop any loot. It's made of underwater, spiky, poisonous crap and seaweed. So they keep the giant fish skull to like hang on the mantle sometime. And Phudo and Stands-with-a-Fist go to consult with the shaman and with the elder because they've got this wonderful cave with an underwater lake, but it is a saltwater lake. And they've got this weird crack, this weird portal with monsters that apparently wander out. And Phudo, I am the leader here, but I would rather confer with everyone and see, the oldest and the wisest come together so I can make an informed decision. Phudo, that's a very, very good thing for a leader to do. And Stands-with-a-Fist is like sitting next to him, and she kind of like drapes her real arm around his waist while they're sitting in this talking circle. And they go, should we just throw rocks into it until it fills up? Should we pour sand into it until it becomes cement? Should we, how do we do this? Do we collapse the whole thing and pray it stays that way? You can't really fill a rift with physical objects, because there could be a whole ocean on the other side. It's the elemental plane of water. You're going to run out of rocks eventually. And finally, Phudo brings forth the staff and presents it to the shaman. The shaman is one of the very few kobold that can actively use magic. Phudo being one of the other ones because he has levels in ranger, but that's beside the point. He goes, he basically asks, does the shaman have ranks in like use magic device and stuff like that? And I go, Phudo, you're actually very lucky. because you remember when you had the first staff and you went to go get the mithril bars for Stands-with-a-Fist's arm? And he goes, yeah, I left it behind with my father. He said, well, while you were gone, your father consulted with a shaman, this shaman, to see if he could determine what that staff does. And that shaman, you were gone for like, what was it, a day, 2 days? They gave you like a 3-day window, but you were gone for a day or two, and he had that day or two to examine the other staff and kind of puzzle over it and, put it in a magic circle and shake his stick over it and do kobold chants and kind of figure out if and how to use it. And he goes, really? And that's the same shaman? He's like, that's the reason he volunteered. You were involved with the procurement of the first one, and he wanted to see where your adventures would go after that, so he volunteered to come with you. And here's a second staff, just like the last one. So he already kind of knows the ins and outs of this particular magic item because he had 2 days to examine it before. And he goes, can he use it for anything? What does it do? And the shaman says that it can open and close rifts. The cracks you've been seeing, they are rifts to another dimension, probably to the elemental plane of water. And that's with the kobold shaman rolling a 20 on his knowledge arcane and rolling a 20 on use magic device and stuff like that. So he was very lucky for a kobold, very smart for a kobold, rolling 2 20s in a goddamn row. But that's what makes campaigns the way they are. When you roll 4 1s in a row, and you are a statistical impossibility. And then there's the kobold shaman that rolled 2 20s in a row. So not only did he know what it was, but he knew how to use it, which is great. So, and he's like, well, shaman, come close this thing in the river. So they go over to the edge of the river, and the shaman lifts the staff high, and he says the magic words, and the gem on the end glows with a radiance, and they see the glow in the river fade and turn into nothing. And they're like, wow. And Phudo sticks his head under the water. It's gone. There's nothing there now. It's like, well, we'll do the other one. Inside the cave, there's a freshwater lake that's being poisoned with salt water. If that was fresh water, that would make for the perfect home. Let's go seal that one up too. So they take the shaman, they take the elder, they go in there, and the shaman kind of lifts the staff again, and he goes, be gone, rift to another dimension, blah, 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 blah. And the staff glows again, and it seals shut the portal, or the crack, or the space between spaces, and the fresh water flows freely once again. They check back in a couple of hours. All the salt water is gone. It's fresh water now, and now it is a perfect place for the Padclaw tribe to settle. All they've got to do is dig out all the rooms they need, dig out all the tunnels they need, and the place is going to be theirs. So that is where we left off from then. Another victory for the Padclaw tribe. They're going to prep this place to receive the 700-strong tribe. They're going to have access to the fish and a fresh forest that doesn't know what kobold hunters look like. So, deer and foxes and stuff, beware. And, now is a time of triumph and decadence and victory for the Padclaw tribe as they move further away from Oceanrim, further away from the lizard folk, and well into a golden age of prosperity. So, that is where we will leave off for today, and we will pick it back up next time. So I hope you enjoyed that story, and I will see you guys on the next D&D Stories. Keep gaming. Hi guys, T here. Remember to hit that like button for me on your way out. If you'd like to see artwork and maps from my gaming table, check out the D&D Stories Facebook page. Also, I have a Patreon if you'd like to toss a few gold pieces into your humble bard's hat. Links in the description below. Keep gaming!